Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farba. As President Volodymyr Zelensky met Donald Trump and U.S. senators in Washington on Tuesday, the Pentagon officially launched a 6-month review that could reshape America's military footprint across Europe. Now, the review comes as Washington pushes NATO allies to take greater responsibility for Europe's defense, while questions also remain over delayed military aid for Ukraine and the future of America's long-term commitment. Joining us now is Colonel Vaidotas Malinionis, founder and managing director of the National Defense Foundation. Good to have you with us. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting.
So let's draw on what we need to know. I mean, this is critical for Europe. It's critical for NATO's eastern flank. Now, Elbridge Colby, the Undersecretary of War for Policy, has said this is something that will move the alliance and primary responsibility for conventional defense into more European hands. So, first of all, what does that mean practically? What kind of fears do you have of this kind of review after 6 months?
Well, first of all, it's not a decision to withdraw, but to review, to reevaluate. Washington wants to ensure that its global military posture reflects current priorities. Yes, and while they are encouraging European allies to assume greater responsibility. And that is, of course, nothing new. Previous presidents also were pushing on that, but not as hard as President Trump. And this review should be seen as part of NATO's long-term adaptation, yes, rather than a sign of weakening transatlantic security. United States now, they are in this review, they are looking about proportions of how many forces and troops they are willing to keep in Europe, Indo-Pacific, and of course in the Middle East. So, and after this review, we of course will see how it will develop. By now, we have some uncertainty, yes, but I hope that will be more clarified. But this is message not about withdrawal, but about reviewing their policy, and this is of course normal. They are NATO independent allies, and of course they can decide. But they are not saying they're withdrawing. We are keeping responsibilities. And they also provide a nuclear umbrella and all plans which are based on NATO planners, done by NATO planners, are valid. So let's see what this process will land.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and at the same time, as you said, it's also where the threats are of today. But at the same time, if we look at what we've seen in the last few years, also just in the recent few weeks, we have drone threats also on the eastern flank. This matters for Lithuania, for the Baltics, for Poland. We actually had a chance to speak to Poland's foreign minister, Mr. Sikorski, who came to TVP World on Tuesday. And let's just hear his opinion on what he thinks of this review.
In principle, it's a good thing because posture of troops should follow the threat assessment. And the threat assessment has changed from 30 years ago or even 5 years ago. So as long as it strengthens the eastern flank and perhaps makes some savings where there is no longer a threat, it could theoretically actually be an improvement of NATO's capabilities.
All right, so as long as it strengthens the eastern flank, could be a good thing. What do you think of the foreign minister's opinion? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree, and especially the good news that European nations now are taking over greater responsibility. And the GDP for the defense has increased dramatically, especially Poland increased, and of course Baltic states, Lithuania particularly. And actually we are on the right path. Only we have to, make sure with our partners from the United States that this shift or change of not balance, but change of proportions of European and versus United States troops will not leave certain security gaps during this process.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, right now we are still considering that USA strategic engagement is vitally important in eastern flank. Yes, especially with the countries which are bordering Russia and threats, and of course. We still have obligations from the United States in Poland and Baltic states and Lithuania particularly about the rotational troops which are deployed on our soil. Although there's some uncertainties right now, but I hope it will be clear very soon.
Yeah, and I think also this is a key point. You mentioned proportions and the keyword rotations. I think that was giving a lot of people worry is where these troops would be, U.S. troops would be rotated from. In fact, that's something we covered some weeks back in terms of like where would American troops be? Would they be rotated out of Poland? They're potentially leaving Germany. So if we, let's say, stay with what the foreign minister just told us in terms of threat assessment, but at the same time, I suppose that threat is here on the eastern flank. So let's just put it that way. In a few months, let's say the Americans come forward and say, well, we need to position troops more on NATO's eastern flank. So could you foresee more U.S. troops, let's say in Poland, maybe Romania, maybe the Baltic states as a consequence of this potentially?
Yeah, logically thinking, yes, because war is not over, far away from the clear ending of it, and the threat level is, so to say, not decreasing, and of course, eastern flank needs bigger and stronger deterrence. So, and all partners, including the United States, are very, very important. So, having more troops in Poland, in Baltic states, and in Romania, it is important for the deterrence. And and most important, is the not only messaging and talking, but also real steps. So, which means that allocation of troops, exercises, yes, interoperability organization will be real steps which will deter the possible threats. So, yes, now I believe that this is understood in the NATO countries, the priorities, and let's see. And right now we don't know how Americans will decide to relocate their troops after the review. But yes, definitely things are changing, and we will see, the outcome of it. And I hope that eastern part of NATO alliance will not be forgotten and evaluated properly.
Mm-hmm. At the same time, I mean, I know it's a delicate situation. I know that there's still hope that the United States will continue to remain a key component of NATO, despite all this. This review ongoing has some people concerned. At the same time, looking at some of the other signals in the last sort of 24 hours as well, let's look at what's happening with Ukraine for a moment. I just want to get your sense of what's happened. I mean, this is positive news. This Russia sanctions bill passed the Senate in the United States, in D.C. yesterday. I believe overwhelmingly, I think 86 senators against 12. Looking at that, how significant that is. But at the same time, we have the Ukraine assistance of $400 million, which apparently has been delayed. And the Trump administration is saying, well, that won't be spent till the end of 2029. Has both sides of Republicans and Democrats a bit concerned here. So these two different things, what do you make of it, first of all, that this first bill passed? How significant will that be? And how concerning is that signal that this Ukraine weapons support, if we're looking at weapons, ammunition, vehicles, equipment, is delayed?
Yeah, first of all, it is good news that Graham's proposed sanctions, yes, were approved. And of course, it is significant event because it will target Russia's, essential energy export, possibilities. And also this is a message to Russia that America, United States is ally, yes, and they stand together with the ally. And this is also a good message for us. So we are united, which means that after Ankara, NATO summit declaration about unity is becoming proved by the real steps. Now, talking about the package which was delayed for Ukrainian assistance, yes, $400 million dollars, and as I understand, Congress is becoming right now increasingly frustrated, yes, because of the Pentagon officials, delaying, and they informed Congress that those money will be implemented, transferred to Ukraine, the assistance by 2029. Of course, it's too late. And I think that having, support by Congress and Senate, I hope this process will move faster. And because Ukraine really need, the assistance now, not after 2 years, because what is really required for Ukraine to defend is air defense capabilities, yes. Particularly talking about Patriot systems, especially anti-ballistic missiles capabilities, also interceptor missiles, and of course ammunition, drones, and long-range precise weapons.
So there's a lot.
Package.
Yes. Sorry to interrupt
package
you.
delivered, after 3 years, it's so too late.
Yeah. But I mean, that's why, as you said, timing is so key. We know that Zelensky also met with Lockheed Martin officials, so we'll see how quickly all that can be transited to Ukraine. Look, we'll have to wrap it up there, I'm afraid. Always a pleasure speaking to you. Colonel Vaidotas Malinionis there. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for watching World Talks, but do stay right here on TVP World for more news and commentary. Goodbye.